If one day the dollar no longer has the strength to sustain the American dream, where would you choose to live to still feel safe, have opportunities to rise, and hold hope for the future? In just the past 18 months, it is estimated that more than 9 million Americans have lost their jobs. Food prices have risen by over 40%. Many retail chains have permanently closed, and the number of people living in cars and tents has increased uncontrollably. The things that were once the foundation of the American dream, a stable job, a peaceful home, a kind community, have now become luxuries. If you've lived long enough to remember America in the 70s and 80s, you might be wondering, what have we lost along the way? Reality has shown us that during times of economic collapse, it is not the wealthiest places, but the most stable, safe, and humane ones that are worth living in. Where people still look at each other with trusting eyes, where dinner time is still a moment of togetherness, even if there's nothing luxurious. Today, we will explore together the 10 best states to live in the United States if the economy collapses. These places are not only a second chance for you, but also where you can live kindly, live meaningfully, and live like an American once took pride in. Let's start with the first state, the one that I believe many of you are also thinking about. If the economy collapses and you only have enough money to choose one place to live the rest of your life, where would you choose? Surprisingly, many people chose Vermont. This is perhaps a precious exception in an era where it seems everyone is chasing speed and profit. With a population of less than 650,000 people, Vermont has the lowest crime rate in the United States. That means you will have more peace of mind whenever you go out. While the big cities are facing with skyrocketing housing prices, Vermont still retains small houses with real lawns, real wooden fences, and real neighbors. Nearly 80% of residents live in small towns where everyone knows each other's names. It's not uncommon for a stranger to stop in the snow to help you change a tire. This is also one of the few places where retirees can take a walk in the woods every morning, then stop by the local bakery, where the owner knows what kind of coffee you drink. What makes Vermont special doesn't come from money, but from a collective choice, not developing at any cost. The people of Vermont have rejected the wave of urbanization. They chose to keep the farms, the green forests, the local shops, and even the old habits, not because they are outdated, but because they keep people closer together. And perhaps thanks to this development model of self-sufficiency, low debt, minimalist living, Vermont has been somewhat immune to national financial fluctuations. That is a rare choice in an America that seems to be caught in the whirlpool of consumerism, and the right choice during turbulent times. A 62-year-old former engineer who had lived his whole life in Boston. A few years after moving to a small town in Vermont, he said, "Here, I don't need to have a lot of money to feel valuable. Every morning I wake up, I hear the birds, not the sirens. I live slowly, and I live truly." In an America that is trading human connections for speed and convenience, Vermont is a reminder that we don't need a big city to live well. We just need a place where we can be ourselves, and where someone cares. What if, instead of measuring success by the account balance, we measured it by the peace of mind we feel each morning when we wake up? Vermont doesn't promise wealth, but if you're looking for a place to truly rest, to slow down without being left behind, then perhaps you've just found it. Vermont can give you a small home, a familiar town, and a life simple enough to remind you that America is still beautiful, if you know where to look. When the whole of America is experiencing inflation and unemployment, there is a place that still maintains a balanced budget, low unemployment rates, and a community that lives kindly. Sounds like a fairy tale? That's Utah for you. A state that doesn't promise you wealth, but is stable enough to keep you unaffected if the national economy shakes. While many states are still trying to recover from COVID and dealing with mounting public debt, Utah maintains an unemployment rate below 3%, manages its budget efficiently, and keeps its social welfare system running smoothly. From Salt Lake City to Provo, you will see construction ongoing, schools consistently open, and national parks welcoming people seeking a breath of nature. The secret of Utah lies not in heavy industry or rapid urbanization, but in the foundation of a cohesive community culture. deeply rooted since the early days of the Mormon pioneers settling the desert. It is the belief in self-reliance, the spirit of mutual aid, and the financial management approach of save first, spend later that has helped Utah become one of the most budget-stable states in the United States. The community here doesn't just build a city, they build trust, brick by brick. And reality proves to us that trust is the most valuable currency if the economy collapses. A retired couple in California once lost nearly all their assets after the real estate market crashed. The wife recounted, "We used to live in a beautiful place, but no one knew our names. When we moved to Utah, we didn't have as much money as before, but now every day is meaningful. No one looks down on our age or our difficulties. In a country where trust in the government and neighbors is waning, Utah stands as a quiet example. Want to thrive in a crisis? Build the community first, then build the roads and cities. What makes Utah strong is not because they have a lot, but because they know how to share what they have. Utah may not be for those seeking fame, but it is very suitable for those looking to reconnect, find meaning, and trust in people. If the economy collapses, money may be lost, but where there are people who look at you with kind eyes, there is still hope. If you're wondering, where can I start over? Swing, then Utah might be the first answer. Most states have mottos, but very few live up to what they proclaim. New Hampshire is different. Here, the motto is not a slogan, but a way of life every day. In these times of economic instability, freedom and community are not vague concepts, but real lifelines. As one of the very few states in the US that does not impose personal income tax or sales tax, New Hampshire shows that you can live decently without being exploited for every single dollar. The school system here ranks in the top 5 in the nation, while the crime rate is among the lowest in the United States. And in towns like Hanover or Exeter, you will see something rare these days. People discussing politics over coffee, then shoveling snow together in front of their neighbor's porch. Amidst a period of economic ups and downs, New Hampshire teaches us that sometimes fewer laws might just be the way to a more orderly society. New Hampshire does not follow the beaten path, not following the bigger is better policy, but choosing a model of lean governance and community autonomy. The people here believe in personal responsibility, but they also deeply value community, a combination that the modern world seems to have forgotten. They don't need a complex welfare network because they trust each other first. A 66-year-old former truck driver once said he slept many nights in his truck in Connecticut after the 2008 crisis. A few years later, he moved to Keene, New Hampshire, thanks to a non-profit organization that helped him find affordable housing. Today, he lives in a small wooden cabin near the woods, working part-time at an auto repair shop. He shares, "I'm not rich, but I no longer feel invisible. Here, the neighbors invite me for dinner. The police remember my name. Winter is cold, but people's hearts are warm." If one day the American economy falters, New Hampshire might be the place where you rewrite the final chapter of your life with your own hands, true to yourself. Here, people won't ask, "What do you have?" but rather, "Who are you, and do you need help?" Have you ever lived in a place where you could smell BBQ and hear the cicadas from the pine grove behind the house, but still close enough to have good hospitals, decent schools, and modern technology? North Carolina is one of the very few states that still retains both the essence of rural life and the breath of modernity, and that is more valuable than ever if the economy is on the brink. With a population of over 10 million, North Carolina can still maintain housing prices among the lowest in the eastern United States, while the hospital system, universities, and high-tech industry are thriving in the Raleigh-Durham area. Cities like Charlotte and Asheville are experiencing rapid growth, but they haven't lost their distinctive Southern culture, close-knit, rich, and full of pride. This is one of the few places where the elderly don't have to leave due to high living costs. They stay because the community needs them. It can be seen that amidst rising prices and people drifting apart, North Carolina retains the basics: a roof over your head, a dining table, and someone who still remembers you. This state once thrived on textiles and agriculture, the trades of the old working class. But instead of relying too heavily on them, North Carolina has managed to pivot towards technology, healthcare, and education without sacrificing community values. And it is precisely thanks to the combination of tradition and innovation between the spirit of self-reliance and the culture of sharing that North Carolina has developed quietly, yet sustainably. And if the economy collapses, that quiet sustainability will be a lifeline for those who no longer want to run. They just want to live meaningfully. A retired elementary school teacher in Ohio, who dedicated nearly 3 decades to her students. When housing prices in her home state became unaffordable, she moved to a small town in North Carolina. Here, she tutors underprivileged children for free and grows vegetables in her backyard to share with her neighbors. She shared, "I don't feel left behind here. On the contrary, I feel that I am still useful, still a part of society." North Carolina evokes the America that many people once knew. Slower, friendlier, and more genuine. Not a place that stands out much on the financial map, but it shines in the hearts of those who once placed human values above all economic charts. If you have spent your whole life working for a better America and now just wish for a place to live simply and authentically, then North Carolina is a choice worth considering. Here, you won't have to choose between modern life and genuine human connection, because both still coexist. There is a place where people leave the city to find, not to get rich, but just to be comfortable, to live near the mountains, near the rivers, and closer to oneself. In an era where everything is becoming noisy, Idaho becomes a whisper, light enough to hear, strong enough to resonate. In the past 10 years, Boise, the capital of Idaho, has been one of the fastest growing cities in the United States. Yet it has maintained a cost of living much lower than many coastal states. With over 4 million acres of forest, thousands of rivers, and a small but close-knit community, Idaho has become a place where retirees, veterans, and young families come to start anew. Simple, yet fulfilling. Low crime rates, negligible air pollution, and a do-it-yourself lifestyle make this place very different from the rest of modern America. Idaho used to be a mining, agriculture, and ranching region, an economy centered around people rather than electronic boards. Because it is not a power center, this state has avoided many financial bubble risks. Housing prices remain reasonable, and a culture of simple living is deeply embedded in the community. Not everyone wants this tranquility, but those who have lived long enough to understand the value of safety, truth, and nature know that this is something money can't buy. A veteran who once lived in Los Angeles, but after the benefits were cut, while prices and costs kept rising, he couldn't continue to stay, so he decided to find a small wooden cabin near Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. He shared, "Now I don't have much, an old pickup truck, a wood stove. But my neighbors invite me to dinner every week, and no one asks how much I earn. They only care if I'm okay." While many places chase growth, Idaho chooses preservation, preserving land, air, and community. This is not a place to show off houses, cars, or credit scores. But it's a place where the morning silence and the sound of the stream flowing outside the porch are worth more than any listed stock. If you are feeling tired from having to prove your worth to society, Idaho might be the place where you no longer need to prove anything. Here, you won't be called the elderly, but the experienced. And it is your life stories that are the most valued treasures. Colorado is not just a destination for those who enjoy mountain climbing, but rather a quiet refuge for those who want to escape the grind and live in tune with their own heartbeat. This state has more than 300 sunny days each year, but what draws people here is not the light. It's the feeling of living comfortably. Cities like Denver, Boulder, and Fort Collins are becoming new hubs for technology, healthcare, and renewable energy, while still maintaining a healthy, friendly, and breathable pace of life. Moderate income tax rates, more affordable living costs compared to coastal states, and a healthcare system ranked in the top 10 nationwide. Colorado is quietly becoming an ideal place for modern-minded retirees. Colorado was once the land of miners and settlers, people who were not afraid of hardship, living off the land and community. That very heritage has created a culture of self-reliance, expansive yet profound. Colorado is not swept away by excessive urbanization models. Instead, the state invests heavily in education, healthcare, clean energy, and environmental protection, all of which are solid pillars if the national economy collapses. Colorado is proof that people over 55 do not have to withdraw from life, but can be reborn in a new form, healthier, more connected, and with a clearer purpose. Here, retirement does not mean waiting for the worst, but rather opening a new chapter where you are still important. If you have spent your whole life nurturing, working, and contributing, and now want to live a life that is truly yours, Colorado might be the place to start. A place that doesn't require you to run, but encourages you to stop, take a deep breath, and smile. Not because you have it all, but because you are enough. Texas is a state not only vast in size, but also broad in mindset, opportunity, and resilience. As the second largest state in the US, Texas is attracting hundreds of thousands of people each year thanks to housing prices that remain below the national average, no personal income tax, and many cities with high growth rates like Austin, San Antonio, and Houston. And if the national economy wavers, Texas will likely still maintain stable job growth, especially in the energy, construction, logistics, and healthcare sectors. But the most noteworthy aspect isn't the numbers. It's the feeling of living close to the land, close to the community, and reconnecting with the simple things. Texas has a spirit of self-reliance deeply rooted since the time of the independent Republic of Texas, and it continues to be reflected today through favorable tax policies, relaxed business regulations, and a very active community network. Small towns and rural areas in Texas maintain a close-knit neighborly culture, with churches serving as community centers, and the elderly still invited to sit in the front row at every service. If you've ever tried your whole life but feel like everything is falling apart too quickly, Texas is a place spacious enough for you to take a step back and close enough for you to feel not alone. Here, you can live simply without being judged, slow down without being left behind. Because in Texas, you don't need much to see that you are still a part of America, literally. When mentioning Minnesota, many people will immediately think of the cold of this state. However, when looking deeper, people gradually realize that in that cold place, there are the warmest people in America, and a community that will never let you stand alone in the snowstorm. Minnesota has a top-ranked healthcare and elder care network in the United States, along with a well-invested system of libraries, parks, and community centers, not only in major cities like Minneapolis, but also in small towns. This is also the state with the highest volunteer rate in the country, with millions of hours each year dedicated to helping the elderly, the sick, and the homeless. And although the winters are long and cold, the people here do not retreat into their own worlds, but come together through churches, clubs, and community activities. Minnesota is rich in Nordic culture, a place where civic responsibility, fairness, and community are not just slogans, but daily practices. Here, competition is not emphasized, but rather the balance, quality of life, and the role of the elderly as the keepers of collective memory. Therefore, in times of crisis, Minnesota does not push the elderly to the margins, but pulls them into the center of connection and sharing. In an America increasingly divided by generational and financial gaps, Minnesota reminds us, a strong society is not measured by GDP, but by how it treats the vulnerable. The elderly here are not seen as the past, but as a source of knowledge, storytellers, and the spiritual foundation. If you're wondering what more you can contribute, come to Minnesota. Here, you are not only cared for, but also trusted and given a role. In a world where so much passes by quickly, Minnesota gives you the time to slow down, connect more deeply, and see your own worth, not for what you do, but for who you are. Massachusetts is the state with the #1 ranked healthcare system in the US, along with a dense network of universities, hospitals, and research centers from Boston to Worcester. Although the cost of living is higher than average, public services, transportation, healthcare, and social welfare operate very efficiently, especially for the elderly. This is also the place with the highest rate of retirees participating in community activities in the country, and the programs for lifelong learning and financial support for the elderly are incredibly diverse. Massachusetts is not wealthy because of oil or real estate, but because of its tradition of knowledge, liberal thinking, and long-term investment in people. This is the cradle of many social reforms, the place where public education began in the 17th century, and it still maintains a model of governance closely connected with the people, especially the elderly. While many places have lost respect for the older generation, Massachusetts sees them as a spiritual asset, the keepers of the flame and the path. In an America that seems to be hastily cutting education, valuing consumption over thought, Massachusetts reminds us, a country can only rise from crisis if there are people who think for others. And here, that thinking doesn't just come from the young, but a lot from those over 60, 70 years old, those who are still learning, still teaching, and still living fully. If you believe that old age does not mean the end, but a phase of transformation, then Massachusetts is one of the rare places that allows you to live that way. A place where there are people to listen when you speak, books for you to read, classes for you to learn, and hands ready to support you as you age. Washington is not the first choice for many people, but for those who want to live with depth, it is the only place that makes them feel hopeful. Washington is one of the states without a personal income tax, yet it still maintains high-quality public services, including transportation, healthcare, technology, and environmental protection. With Seattle as a leading tech hub, the state also boasts numerous peaceful small towns like Spokane, Bellingham, and Olympia, where seniors can live more affordably while still having access to a strong healthcare and welfare system. And despite being famous for its rain, Washington is one of the places with the highest rates of renewable energy use in the United States, particularly from hydropower, helping to maintain stable living and utility costs during crises. Washington was built not from easily exploitable resources, but from a mindset of sustainable organization. The state invested early in technology, the environment, and green infrastructure systems, while also maintaining support programs for the elderly, immigrants, and vulnerable populations that many other places have cut. It is the combination of modern development and humanitarian policies that not only helps Washington stand firm, but also makes it a model for a fair society amidst chaos. While many places are adjusting budgets and cutting services, Washington demonstrates that when you invest in people first, during tough times, it is those people who will keep the country standing. This state shows a different way of development, not based on overexploitation, but on intelligence, community, and resilience. Washington will not ask you, "What have you done?" but will ask, "What do you need now to keep living?" A place where rainy days cannot overshadow the light from small communities, where you can still plant, contribute, and revive in your own way. 10 states today don't promise to make you rich, but they can keep you safe, connected, and living a meaningful life. Because sometimes, a simple meal with neighbors, a park to stroll in, or a knowing glance is even more valuable than financial stability in uncertain times. What about you? Where are you living? Have you ever considered leaving the city or moving to another state to live a better life? Share your story, thoughts, or even the state you find most livable if everything falls apart. Comment below, because who knows, your story might inspire others. If you feel this video touches something in your heart, please subscribe to accompany the channel on deeper journeys exploring real life, livable places, and values that still exist amidst a changing America. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the next videos. The content in this video is for reference and reflects a synthesis of public sources, social data, and life perspectives. It does not replace financial, legal, or immigration advice. Viewers should conduct further research and carefully consider before making any decisions about relocating.